Shares of Johnson Johnson are trading slightly higher in pre-market trading after the company came out with numbers and also raised its profit forecast for the full year. Our Adam Shapiro had a chance to talk to the company's chief financial officer. He is here with us now. Good morning, Adam.
Hey, Julie. Yeah, J&J had a pretty good quarter. I mean, they're beating on all cylinders. The sales were up to $23.3 billion, and that's up 27.1% compared to second quarter of 2020. That's to be expected. Medical devices has recovered, but there's a lot of questions about what's going to happen with the COVID-19 vaccine. So here's what Joe Wolk told us.
What I would say is, the results across Johnson & Johnson is, at least during my tenure as CFO, I don't know that we've ever been in a healthier position. All segments are really clicking on all cylinders. You've mentioned medical devices. So we knew coming into the quarter, it was going to be strong, right? The comps were going to be favorable to Q2 of last year when elective procedures were essentially shut down. But you look at the underlying business and you compare it to, let's say, a more normal quarter of Q2 2019, that business is up 7%. Pharmaceuticals is up 17% and consumers up 6% versus that same time horizon. In medical devices specifically, in addition to the favorable comps, we're seeing just better execution. We are leading in some market share where we were already leaders. We're taking share where we weren't leaders. And we just have a much better level of cadence of innovation coming out. So we've got 17 new product launches in that segment, on pace to have 25 this year. And over the last 2 years, it's been closer to above 30. So we're in very good shape. Ashley McAvoy and her team have done a great job. And we're seeing great growth where we've placed investments, specifically in areas like Asia Pacific, as well as here in the U.S.
You brought up pharmaceuticals, $12.59 billion in the quarter. Infectious diseases, which includes the COVID vaccine, $1 billion. But in your guidance, and we should point out, you raised full year guidance, $90 billion to $90.8 billion. But if you include the COVID-19 vaccine that J&J has, $92.5 billion to $93.3 billion. You're really expecting demand for the vaccine to increase, aren't you?
We know, it's not only an expectation, it's almost a certainty, quite frankly, given the advanced purchase agreements that we have around the world. There is a lot of people who see benefit with the one shot. Certainly, we had very strong data published in the New England Journal of Medicine a few weeks ago that was peer reviewed, indicating that the durability is at least 8 months, better than other vaccines that are out there. And it really is taking on all variants, inclusive of the new Delta variant.
When we talk about the vaccine, you talked about peer review. There's a study which has not been peer reviewed that says your vaccine might require a booster shot. We should point out Pfizer's vaccine, they've said they're going to want people to get a booster shot. Where does J&J stand on that?
Yeah, so, we saw the study last night as well, Adam. I think we all have to be just a little bit cautious on a test tube study that looks at one element of protection. The data that I just referenced really looks at neutralizing antibodies as well as T cell activity for complete immunity protection. We know that that's very solid data, again, peer reviewed, as you noted. And I think it's really the responsible act to rely on health officials who have all the data at their fingertips to determine when and if boosters are needed for any of the vaccines. At this point, they haven't done that yet.
I want to switch gears when we move from the vaccine to other issues. There are the reports which are not confirmed that you're looking at perhaps spinning off the talcum powder and affiliated talc products into a separate business, then put that new entity into bankruptcy as a way to deal with, I think Reuters was the entity that broke the story, something like 30,000 plaintiffs. How do you protect the balance sheet, the company, the world's third largest pharmaceutical company, from lawsuits, whether they have merit or not, from constant litigation?
Yeah, so let's speak specifically about the talc. We're going to continue to defend the safety of that product based on decades of independent research by some of the best institutions in the world that prove that product was safe. With respect to the current Reuters report, we can only speculate that now attorneys are speculating about our legal strategies. They're probably somewhat frustrated with the Daubert ruling hearing of last year, where much of the so-called expert testimony from the plaintiff's attorneys that was being offered in these suits it has been barred from being presented, as well as experts themselves. So, we're going to continue to defend based on the safety record and let science dictate.
And it's not been announced yet, but a lot of news organizations reporting a potential opioid settlement. This would certainly remove a cloud from the balance sheet, would it not? Can you share with us when this might be coming down the pike?
Yeah, so obviously there's a number of parties involved in that. Adam, it's really been 2 years now that we've been on record saying that we've offered a settlement, we've reserved for it fully. So we'd like to see that come to conclusion in short order, but it is a complicated process, and we'll let that play out. But it's really not new news from a Johnson Johnson perspective. We've certainly communicated this with the investment community and more broadly in hopes of finding a settlement.
And Julie, once again, one of the reasons you saw shares slightly higher right now is their full year guidance now, sales being anywhere between 90 billion and 90.8 billion. But when you add in sales of the COVID-19 vaccine, that's going to be at the higher end, 93.3 billion. So Johnson Johnson, the pandemic, certainly not behind all of us. But as we talked about in the interview with Joe Wolk, perhaps the worst of it is behind us. Julie?
Yeah. And Adam, just to put a fine point on what you were just saying, obviously the COVID-19 is important. The vaccine is important for Johnson Johnson, just as it is for Pfizer, but it is an enormous company. So it's important for revenue sort of more at the margin than anything else. This is not a game-changing product for the company.
No, the biggest driver within the pharmaceutical unit is oncology pharmaceuticals. So, and we talked about that. Their research and development is really based in the cancer-fighting drugs. But the COVID-19 vaccine, which, by the way, the CDC says has about a 66% efficacy against COVID-19, it is not the financial driver.
Right. Adam, great to see you. Thanks for being with us here this morning and bringing us that interview.